Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to EIG's third in a series of webinars on AI ML strategies to accelerate root cause failure analysis kickoff meetings. With our guest panelist, Aaron Parr, founder and CEO of enroute.io, Dr. Irene Legiec, CEO of IALS Consulting, and my name is Jim Vries, founder and managing partner of Enhance International Group. We appreciate you taking the time today and to attend today's webinar on building your evolving resilient enterprise, focusing on root cause analysis and using artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques. Again, we appreciate you taking the time today, and we hope that your family are happy and safe, especially as these coming up for these holidays. This is our first webinar, or a third webinar. Our first webinar was focused on capitalizing on your mistakes. And our second webinar was on unlock employee engagement in RCAs. And today, again, we'll be getting into AI ML. Our fourth webinar next year in January will focus on the impact on methodology and collaboration, as well as we will be bringing in some guest speakers and panelists on indoctrinating AI and ML in the workplace. Please do enter any questions you have in the chat and participate in the polling. Joining us today is Aaron Parr, as CEO from enroute.io. Aaron is a dedicated chemical engineer and a Six Sigma black belt, Lean Six Sigma black belt, who's passionate about process optimization and problem solving. And then we have Irene Legiec, who earned her doctorate of chemical engineering from Rutgers and guides manufacturing engineering organizations to lead their sectors to operational excellence. And of course, these very impressive panelists with us today. My background is I am the managing partner, again, of Enhance International Group, and we focus on the 1 + 1 = infinity and to drive collaborative decision-making. With that, we'll go straight into the deliverables. The first deliverable is addressing challenges in applying artificial intelligence to root cause events. And we're working on how to make decisions. And we're going to focus on how do you maximize all the data that's out there, structured and unstructured data. We're going to get into that pretty deep. And then we'll talk about root cause analysis tools, and Aaron will do a bit of a demo for us. And then we'll get into digital and AI collaboration tool remote applications, as well as linking to the bottom line. So with that, we're going to be focused on, really at the end of the day is how we can get AI RCA tools to report reductions in downtime by 50%. So what do we mean by that? If we can do an RCA faster and more efficient, when we do come up and running, we're going to be more effective and efficient. With that, Irene, a few words of introduction.
So good morning, all. Good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today. I founded IALS Consulting because one of the things that I really enjoyed during my career was helping businesses problem solve and gain revenue and grow as an organization towards operational excellence. I've got 27 plus years of experience in DuPont. I see some of my DuPont colleagues on, so thanks for joining us. We work in 6 sectors in the consulting world here in ILS Consulting, a lot in continuous improvement. I do have a black belt in Six Sigma, a lot of training and mentoring, as well as development of training programs, career pathways. I've developed career pathways for 3 different companies now. Engineering optimization, it's really understanding about your bench strength with your team. Do you have the right folks on the team? Do you have enough bench strength? And this all helps roll into development plans for personnel. Do a lot with operational excellence and standardization. And right now, I'm working for two separate large chemical manufacturing companies on some confidential program management. So that's on an as needed basis as well. But what our focus is to shine the light on opportunities to help you meet your business needs.
Good morning and afternoon, everyone. My name is Aaron Parr, and thank you for the great introduction, Jim. I'm the founder and CEO of enroute.io. We're a company focused on transforming how teams solve complex problems. So I'm a chemical engineer from the University of Delaware. After graduating, I spent most of my career in the sustainable energy field, where I worked on a lot of different projects like capital project management, process optimization. I worked in advanced statistical modeling, and then finally I ended up in continuous improvement. In my final year, we had averted north of $10 million in critical losses due to downtime, using some of the RCA techniques, we'll dig into today. Now, building on this foundation, I launched enroute.io to empower organizations to leverage data-driven methodologies and collaborative tools for tackling today's most pressing challenges. We offer two main services. The first is an RCA prep automation software. This includes polls, bias detection, as well as RCA pre-work automation. Additionally, we offer a custom-built AI RCA engine for enterprise teams. And I won't go too deep into that because we're going to cover it later on in this webinar. But I'm excited to be here and share how this approach can help drive results for your teams and organizations.
Thanks, Aaron and Irene. And just a little background on Enhanced International Group. We're a group of about 70 now partners that have our common goal of providing practical solutions and delivering sustainable growth for your companies. We are broken down into strategy and execution. And we are really focused on how to gain and maintain your competitive advantage in the marketplace. With that, for today, we're focusing on driving visibility to risks and creating action. And we're talking about risk, of course, from a root cause analysis. How do we turn that risk into an opportunity for growth for your company? And with that, I just want to kick it off here with a quote from the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella. And he's quoted here as, businesses don't need new technology, they need a new mindset. So what is he saying here? So he's saying that, from our perspective here today is it highlights AI's potential to revolutionize operations, especially in root cause analysis. So we need to start thinking out of the box, non-traditionally, that we have been stuck in for the last 30, 40 years, and look at how do we rethink problem solving to make deeper interconnected ways so we can make better decisions, quicker decisions, and again, bring us back to this mindset of, we need to embed this new mindset into our businesses. With that, we're going to focus today in our agenda on the challenges of conducting RCA events. We all have conducted them in the past. There are challenges of getting them off and running. Sometimes, executing them can take longer than we would like. So we'll go through those challenges, and then we'll get into the goal setting, the hitting the ground running. We'll get into, there's a lot of data out there. There's structured data and unstructured data. So we'll talk about how do you bring those two data sources together to help you make more timely decisions from an RCA. And then from that, we'll be leveraging AI to enhance data insights through that data and accelerating that analysis with AI applications. And then we'll finalize the webinar with preparing for success, finalizing your kickoff meeting setup, because it's all hinges on that pivot point of having that first kickoff meeting, making it effective, and not making it a repetitive meeting that is ineffective, which often happens in RCA events. So with that, Aaron, what's the difference? We got all these RCA, RCFAs. What's the difference, buddy?
Well, I would say the key difference is to make sure that we're all speaking the same language. I'm sure many of you have experienced a moment in a meeting where someone might say RCA, someone else hears RCFA, someone else says 5 Ys, and suddenly 3 different people are on entirely different pages. Worse yet, imagine you're new to the industry or business you're at, like a consultant, and you start using fault tree analysis when the team was expecting a 5 Ys and they called RCA's problem solving reports. It's no wonder that the same problem solving tool might go by a bunch of different names. Our industries are wonderfully diverse. We do RCA in manufacturing of chemicals, food, and even non-manufacturing roles like utilities. But here's the thing, misaligned terminology creates unnecessary friction. It would be like starting a journey without a map everyone can agree on. So to set the stage today, when we say root cause analysis or RCFA or RCA, we're talking about structured methods to uncover why an incident occurred and working to prevent its reoccurrence. But notice some of the other terms on this slide. We have incident analysis, corrective action analysis, fault tree analysis. They're all valuable tools, but they serve specific purposes. So for today, we're going to keep it generic and high level so we can dig into the details of how to use AI and root cause analysis instead of the actual details of root cause analysis. But I want to leave you with speaking one language is the first step to problem solving, especially when you're bringing teams that don't normally work together to work on an RCA.
So some of the challenges when you're conducting a RCA event, and we've all experienced this, is first and foremost is you're asked to lead an RCA, but then getting the support to ensure that the operators can be there or to ensure that we have the time to do the investigation right, is difficult. So you really need to have that leadership commitment to really solving the problem. Some of the challenges too is that if you over rely on the AI, or are scared of that it lacks human context, that's going to create a challenge in of itself. You have to take a look at biases and safety risks. Um, the other thing too is you got to make sure that you solve the right problem. In the earlier seminars, we really talked about problem statement definitions using the 5W2H method. And the reason why you want to do that is you got to get really crisp at what is the defect or the problem that you're trying to solve. You want to make sure that you have insights from all of your stakeholders. Don't just talk to the shift supervisor, talk to the operators on the shop floor, talk to the customers, make sure you understand everyone's perspective. Uh-oh, there we go. And the other thing too, and I am very guilty of this, is I just want to fix it. So I want to jump to the solution right away. And I have to take my time to go through the process. One of the big things, and we saw some of this data, is 40 to 70% of the recommendations that are developed from these type of problem-solving events are not followed through by leadership. So even if you do all this work, it doesn't stop. You have to keep going and make sure you follow through. You have to really balance artificial intelligence with the human insight for an effective RCA. It's not one or the other, it's a partnership in both.
Thanks, Irene. So next we'll get into goal setting and hitting the ground running. And to start us off here, we'll go through the major steps of conducting an RCA event workflow process. We'll start off with, you inform everybody, of course, that you had an incident and all the leaders, and you want to do that as soon as possible. Then between 2 and 14 days, you're focused on establishing the team, gathering the facts, building your charter, creating your goal statement, your problem statement, and organizing all of the facts. So that's the major thing that you want to do to get kicked off, so that you can conduct your root cause analysis and then develop your corrective actions and assign actions and report out the follow-up. So all of this is very time consuming and it takes a lot of time. You're trying to balance this with everything else going on. But as you look at this and you really reflect on it, it is this flow process, which is pretty typical, is pretty reactionary problem solving process. So when we use AI, we want to speed up parts of this process to make it more timely, and with the overall focus being that we are able to get to the root cause as fast as possible while getting the unit back up and running, or the line back up and running, if it's practical, so that when we do get the line back up and running, it's not a partial solution and the line is going to come down again for the same or similar reasons. So this is the challenge that we all have when doing RCAs over the years, is how do we make this more timely and effective and collaborative, and so that when we do get up and running in the future, it is up and running in a better way than it was before. With that, Irene?
So how do you hit the ground running? How do you set those expectations? So first things first, establish clear objectives. Having a project charter or a charter for your team is really, really highly recommended, because that really not only formalizes the process and it establishes clear objectives for why you are meeting. You want to make sure the whole team is aligned on that charter. You want to also then review the RCA process framework, identify it, make sure everyone understands it. Identify your data sources and formats. So there's going to be a lot of data there, especially if you're doing, let's say, an RCA in a process, whether it's a quality issue or whatever. Where's all the data coming from? Is there a data historian? There's, manual, data that the operators might take. There's observations, there's interviews. So there's all different types of data and all different formats of data, whether it's discrete or continuous. You want to identify the applicable tools. Just because you're doing an RCA or you've got a Six Sigma black belt doesn't mean that every single tool is going to be applicable. Choose wisely. And then you want to really get that time commitment to get it done appropriately. A detailed RCA isn't going to be done in 2 hours and in one meeting. You want to make sure you have a meeting schedule set and that people commit to solving the problem.
Thanks, Irene. And we've been talking about just getting ourselves set up now for an RCA from just the ground rules, so to speak. And now we want to say, well, how can we integrate artificial intelligence in here? What are your expectations for AI and how it's going to support root cause analysis? So we ask you to enter in pollev.com your thoughts about what are the attributes or expectations that you would expect RCA to provide in helping this RCA process. Aaron, your thoughts?
Yeah, Jim, I'm seeing data collection. I'm going to get into that a little bit deeper in a couple of slides, but just to quickly set the stage, when I ask myself, how can I actually apply AI in a strategic way so that it actually helps my RCA and it's not just for the sake of using AI, a lot of the times it comes back to data, either collecting data, transforming data so it's more usable, or creating new data sources. One of the first applications I ever used AI in an RCA was to unlock a new data set with computer vision, which sounds fancy, but the models already exist out there, and it's easy to turn something as simple as video. The number of cars that drove across the truck scale, that can turn quite quick. You can using computer vision, excuse me, you can turn that quite quickly into quantifiable data.
Absolutely. Irene, do you have any thoughts on what you're seeing here on the screen?
So there's a couple of tangents here that are similar, and it's about the broader knowledge base, information from elsewhere, thoughts thought-provoking. And my sense is that AI functionality is going to help uncover additional areas for you to go look at in an incident investigation that you might not have thought of beforehand. So it's going to make sure that you do a thorough job. The other thing that I'm looking at is accelerating the process, speeding it up. Hopefully that will help. We all know how lengthy these things can go. And if you're in a shutdown, that's going to be critical to get your plant back up and running.
Yeah, and just a few closing thoughts. I see data security and managing data and being, from a broader knowledge base. It seems like just gathering the data for the RCA event and putting it into a form that is manageable so you can have a meaningful discussion when you have your kickoff meeting with your colleagues in the RCA face-to-face or virtual meeting. I think that everybody has that information ahead of time and you're able to make timely evaluations at that point in time. That just seems to always take a long time. So I see that in there, and I see data security. I don't want to look over that one because that was a very good input from someone that, the data needs to be secure. And that is certainly a major issue, especially when I think about chemical plants and power plants and so forth, where you have disparate systems all over the place. And sometimes it's hard to bring all that data together. But, and then of course, then there's the PR relations is also a big part of this, that we're all talking on a unified front and that you have a clear message about the event of what is going to be said and so forth. So excellent thoughts. Any closing thoughts before we move on? We'll come back at the end of this section. Okay. I think Aaron, you're going to take over now.
All right. So leading into my next discussion, data. I really wanted to focus on what I envision as the fuel that drives a productive kickoff meeting, and that is data, data, data. Specifically, I break data down into two key types. I see structured data and unstructured data. And then think about how they categorize into 5 critical sources that power our root cause analysis. And let me quickly go through these. First, we have physical evidence. Imagine the aftermath of an incident. This is photos of equipment damage, video footage of the event, or even forensic evidence like a broken bolt. Second, we have process documentation. This is the playbook that your team runs on. It could be SOPs or standard work documents, but it could also be P&IDs or value stream maps. These are your process's DNA. This shows how things should work. So when you look at them, it will be clear and point towards deviations when something goes wrong. Now, third, we have measurement data. This is where structured data comes in. This is logs, SCADA systems, data historians, and time studies. This is the numerical heartbeat of your operations. And this is where you find trends and anomalies that might otherwise go unnoticed. And then the fourth category is incident records. I see this category improperly ignored during non-safety RCAs, which is unusual because this includes daily walkthroughs, near miss reports, OSHA recordables, and equipment failure logs. These all hold powerful insights and can often reveal recurring issues that are waiting to be addressed, even when it's not a safety-related incident. Could be a quality incident. And then finally, this final 5th category really feeds into the other 4, but this is helpful when you're first starting out to think about separately. This is leveraging new data sources with AI. So for the unstructured data side, this is text, images, video, or even voice memos or recordings of interviews. This is a treasure trove of insights traditionally hard to analyze. And when people think of AI, this is often where their mind first jumps, especially with the popularity of ChatGPT. And for structured data, you think of untapped SCADA data or IoT sources. AI here can reveal patterns hidden within the noise using some advanced statistical techniques. Jim, Irene, did you have any other potential data sources that might fit into these categories?
Yeah, I would just want to add, it's in here embedded, but I would add maintenance records
Mm.
and practices that you're doing and that past history. And just I'd follow up a little bit on sentiment analysis and that, you know, with the new tools of being able to capture sentiment from conversations and especially through the incident reports and records that are out there, uh, tracking sentiment of the facility as a regular basis on
Mm.
a daily or weekly basis of what people are feeling about on the work site is really rich information that is now available and can be indoctrinated in any company very at a very reasonable price right now, and it's well worth it to look into the technology that's out there today. Irene?
I want to pick up on the last one, unstructured text or image, video, or voice. That one to me really struck home. During COVID, I had to lead an incident investigation on a fire at one of my plants. And it was on the West Coast. We were on the East Coast. And so the maintenance team that was there took 360-degree videos for us of the facility of the area, and which was super helpful in us really understanding the layout and understanding what was going on. But having that AI lens on it, I think would have greatly accelerated that process as well. So I want to, really highlight that taking that video, taking the snapshots and the photos to document the scene or what's happening is really, really critical.
Yeah, so just to build on that, one of our partners, Harvest, uh, does take video feeds from your security cameras that are already existing and records near misses and so forth. So there's a lot that can be done at a very reasonable price to gain insights on a regular basis. So we shouldn't be looking at it as the RCA event. We should be looking to collect this data all the time in lieu of a RCA event. So when you do the RCA, you have all this information. It's already able to be rolled up. To me, that's that new mindset that we talked about at the top of the
Mhm.
webinar. We need a new mindset, the way that we look at data. Aaron, any closing remarks?
Yeah, that mindset shift is exactly how you start seeing this data when you truly need it and not just when you're documenting the RCA after the fact. When this data is already readily available and you have the systems that your employees can pull on this data and these new data sources, then it's like an incident happens. They already know the data's there and they can go use it and they can use that to power what they do. If a unit goes down, they can use that to decide, more quickly what goes wrong, what should we troubleshoot first, to bring that unit up more quickly. And if you think about it, you've kind of already started the first few steps of an RCA process, even though that's just normally how teams resolve downtime issues. And then with that, I will hand it off to you, Irene.
So, how do we bridge that data collection to the insights? So, first of all, have a data collection strategy. Um, you don't want to just collect any type of data. What is the actual RCA? What is the specific information you're looking at? Make sure that you develop a plan for what type of data you're going to collect. How long are you going to grab it for? Is it going to be for the last year, 3 years? Identify the various data types and then make sure that you prioritize the data relevance. There's going to be some data sets that are going to be nice to have. There's going to be some data sets that are going to be absolutely critical to have. You want to make sure the data, the source of truth, that you're collecting the right data and that it's accurate and consistent. You know, you might be collecting, let's say you're collecting pH data for a process, and then you realize, well, crap, we haven't calibrated that sensor in forever. You know, that data is all wrong. So you want to make sure, one, it's accurate, it's measuring accurately, and it's consistent. The other thing you're going to have to do is standardize the data formats. Make sure that you do a little bit of cleanup. Those of us who've had to deal with transferring stuff from Excel into Minitab, you've run that gamut of making sure that you don't have any issues in your data where when you run the analysis that Minitab's going to stop, or whatever type of data analysis tool you use. So there's going to be some cleanup of data that you have to do, and make sure you have some sort of data review process in there. Yeah. And again, it's about connecting the relevant, reliable data to strengthen your RCA process. The other thing that you want to do is organize the data. So again, it's getting that stuff in the spreadsheet. Make sure that if something happens, you're tagging the data for context. So let's say if you see a shift from one week to another, it might be a new campaign, it might be a new batch of raw material. Have some information in there to provide context to what's been happening from a historical perspective. And then you want to set it up for the AI integration. So depending on your systems and tools, label and structure the data, sort it by the type and relevance. Make sure that it's actually centralized in one folder versus in half a dozen folks' hard drives. You want to have it in one place, one source of truth. Next. Aaron?
All right. So data is abundant, but we have all this raw data and we've started to categorize it. That doesn't solve problems. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples on how to use AI to turn that data into actual insights.
And before we do that, I'm sorry, Aaron, there's a question in here I think we could answer before we move on. With AI, don't you have the opportunity to collect all the data and then decide which data are useful and relevant instead of first defining a data collection strategy?
Yes, you absolutely can. And it can definitely help you when you're designing the original data architectures. But after this first section, I'm going to start discussing AI workflows, which is when, these first three examples are going to be quick, like single images, single Excel spreadsheets. When you start talking about AI workflows, you're talking about pulling entire databases, like all the data that sits inside your ERP system, for example. And when you start getting to that level, it helps to put a little bit of planning and thought into how you pull and organize that data so you're not using so much compute power, which is ultimately going to make your systems that you build more latent, and it's gonna slow them down.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yep. So I'm going to show you three quick examples of just out of the box. Most of these are ChatGPT, basic examples of turning AI or using AI to turn data into actual insights. And then I'm going to build on those concepts into more complicated workflows. And then finally, I'm going to bring it all together into what I see as an RCA engine system. So with this first example, this is converting visual evidence into data. Think about the photos and videos your team collects after an incident. Traditionally, analyzing those requires manual effort or subjective interpretation, or maybe you just take those pictures, upload them into a SharePoint, and refer to them if somebody in the RCA room didn't go on Gemba and see where the incident occurred. Now you can use tools like ChatGPT or any other large language model with visual capabilities to analyze those visuals for measurable insights. So, for instance, imagine uploading an incident site photo and asking AI to identify hazards, measure distances, or even potentially to pinpoint object placements. This was just an image, and now all of a sudden it's quantifiable data that you can integrate into parts of your RCA process. And I've done just that with this image on the right. I prompted a large language model, identify the industries, tasks, and potential hazards in this image, focus on clues like clean room suits, specialized equipment, and team workflows, highlight safety risks and workspace organization for actionable insights. Now, this is a very condensed version of the 3 to 4 page document I would normally ask for an image like this, where you can put in multiple questions that you would think to ask on a shop floor. Now, the answer was this image likely depicts the aerospace industry, which is correct. This is the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, California. As workers in clean room suits manage the assembly of a complex suspended component, possibly a rover, so it correctly identified load risks and rigging hazards. And it also identified hazards like contamination control, mitigated by PPE and teamwork. So I'll get into what happens when you build workflows around this type of thinking and how you can categorize all of this in a minute. But very quickly, if somebody on your team is maybe unfamiliar with the area, or your RCA facilitator isn't a part of the process, they're not an operator on the line, all of a sudden they can take pictures and then use AI as a companion to kind of guide them. They can go get more pictures of that load risk because they now know that rigging is a potential hazard here. Maybe they weren't aware of clean rooms and contamination control. Now they are, and they can ask further follow-up questions and use that to guide essentially their forensic investigation. So I have 2 more examples, and I'll go over these very quickly. The first is you can extract patterns in process documentation. So you can snap a picture or upload a PDF, and you can identify reoccurring issues and improvement opportunities by doing this. So a quick example, you use ChatGPT, you upload your PDF of an SOP, and you ask it to analyze patterns in the procedures or logs. You could specify it more towards your incident, like maybe you're doing a proactive RCA and you're looking for bottlenecks in your process. So you can adjust your prompting. That's super important when you do document analysis. And then third, we have team sentiment. So you can use sentiment analysis models to measure team opinions. I usually start with polling or team interviews, and then I upload those directly into a sentiment model. And I'm able to quickly identify and categorize areas like specific departments or specific processes or specific materials in an incident. And then I can gauge positive to negative how the team might feel about that. And that helps guide me as a RCA facilitator. It helps me understand where there might be potential biases as we start to dig into the root causes. And then fourth, I have one more example that I visualized here. This is data categorization. So you can automatically classify unstructured text data. For example, you can use ChatGPT to analyze patterns and procedures or logs. In this specific example, I'm going to categorize team feedback from a poll I sent out to my team ahead of an RCA. I prompted ChatGPT. I said, categorize this RCA session into unstructured text data into categories, actionable themes. Those categories were potential root causes, corrective actions, and outcomes. And then the output was a list of potential causal factors, a list of potential corrective actions, and then a list of potential outcomes that me as a facilitator should take in mind as I build my agenda for this specific RCA. So this is great, but where this gets really powerful is that categories can be combined with workflows. And I'm going to get into that in just a minute. And why would you want to combine these categories, this categorization and workflows? You can begin to quantify categorical data. And also you can begin to feed this into your RCA, right? Now I have a list of causal factors to start building my Y tree. All right, so now I want to shift gears and talk about the AI workflows. But before I do that, I want to take a step back and I want to talk very quickly about the backbone of how I build an AI-driven workflow. This is a strategic framework for AI-powered RCA acceleration, the methodology that I use behind all of my AI workflows. This approach is designed to harness both the power of new data sources and the precision of AI tools, but to actually use that to enhance root cause analysis at every step. This is how you make sure you're not just unleashing the power of AI for the sake of using AI in RCA. So on the right, this workflow diagram outlines the journey from raw data to informed decision-making. You start with new and large data sources, collect those. These can range from incident photos to team polling results to near miss data, operational records, all of the data sources we talked about earlier. And then we move to data categorization. This is splitting the data into structured, like surveys or historical RCA data, and unstructured types like free text responses, videos, or images. The next step is data integration and organization. This is where we bring everything together into a cohesive format using advanced analytics and your AI models. And then these insights are in the second to last stage of AI-driven analysis. This is where you reveal patterns and you actually generate actionable intelligence. So this is your turning your graphs into insights and takeaways. And then finally, you want to feed that into a decision framework for RCA preparation. So this is where you help your teams make informed, data-driven, go, no-go decisions for RCA prep meetings. For example, this might feed into if you're ready to have your kickoff meeting for an RCA. So this framework is just the foundation. Moving into the next slides, we're going to talk about what these AI workflows. So these AI workflows seamlessly integrate into the reactive RCA process we showed earlier in the blue arrows. This is just your traditional RCA roadmap. And then we're also focusing today on just seeding your prep meeting with as much meaningful data as possible. This can cut your meeting time in half, and it'll also drive better insights. You'll have a better first meeting in your RCA. Of course, you can build workflows all throughout your entire RCA process, but for the sake of time today, we're just going to focus on this first piece. So in the green boxes, you'd start in this workflow with polling or interviews. Our AI workflow would then begin to automate this data collection. You could use, to get started, you could use Google Polls. And then for the voice recording side, you can just use voice memos on your phone, maybe as you're going on Gemba and talking to operators. Just if you do that, please make sure you ask for permission before recording people. And this is going to reduce the manual effort while you actually can go out and get more people, more stakeholders input. We move this into sentiment and category extraction. These are your models. Once collected, these inputs are going to be analyzed using either a sentiment analysis model. You could use a large language model, as I showed earlier, but sentiment analysis models hold higher accuracy because they're designed for that specific application, as well as categorization tools, lumping things into common categories. And this step is going to identify key areas of concern or bias that may influence your process. And then finally, we want to tie this all back to our RCA process. So we do that by creating a graphical representation of bias. So these findings are translated into visual formats using either like Tableau or Power BI to highlight potential biases or problem hotspots, enabling facilitators to focus on those key areas during discussions and not have to discover them in the middle of the discussion. So in this next example, this is where we go to the next level of what we did with the Jet Propulsion Lab image in ChatGPT. So we again start with incident photos and near miss detection. So AI tools can analyze photos or video footage from the event to identify discrepancies or hazards, depends on your application. And then this step is going to help detect things that might have been overlooked during initial reporting. You can then feed that data into vision-capable multimodal LLMs like GPT-4o and combine that visual and text-based data for deeper analysis. So now, all of a sudden, this automation has enabled us to put in those very, very long prompts and contexts. Instead of just typing that 2-sentence prompt I showed you with the Jet Propulsion Lab, you can put in that 3 to 5 page list of questions that your RCA facilitator would normally ask on the shop floor. And again, it's not as accurate as actually going out and interviewing people on the shop floor. But when you combine this with other sets of data, it can uncover insights that you would have otherwise missed. It really is just expanding your capability as an RCA facilitator. So then you can take this information and do 2 things. One, you can do visual bias analysis like we talked about in the last workflow. The other thing you can do is you can generate prioritized insights. So AI, and this gets at that question I got a little earlier about ranking and prioritizing data. Here, your AI can rank probable causes, which could give your team a clear starting point. And this step will ensure that you focus on the most critical factors first. So this is the step above the ChatGPT speaking about images and photographs that you're taking. The next level of this is a real-time AI copilot where you can verify assumptions as you build your Y tree. So by checking directly with images and videos from the field as you're building your Y tree or developing corrective actions, it can check those assumptions and provide the source that it got it from. Say, hey, we saw this out in the field. We think that's assumption. We couldn't find this out in the field, those types of things. Now, that is a lot more complex than this, but it's the same line of thinking. So,
Aaron, we have a question in the chat. Do you use AI to find similar incidents from outside the facility or company?
so I'm not entirely sure I understand this question, but what I think you're trying to get across is that, do you use AI to analyze other case studies or events and compare them to your own events? I have
I
not.
think
Yeah.
I think they're saying there could be similar incidents that occurred outside the facility. You go and to see what they did, what were the results, and then leverage that information as input into this. That's
So,
what I believe they're asking.
great question. I have not used that directly, but I can see the power in setting that up, because when you have these AI automation set up, it is easy to add more and more data. You've made it easy to process more information. So absolutely, you could get root cause analyses from other companies, from other similar incidents, and use AI to flag that. And using these same types of workflows would be totally capable of doing that.
Yeah, because I think typically management's going to say, is this unique to our company or has other folks encountered the same issue? How did they address it? And they would want that to be incorporated in the RCA meeting. That's pretty common.
Yeah, I mean,
And with the large databases and using AI, I think it's pretty easy to do at this point in time.
yeah, I mean, with these workflows, essentially the framework to do that is already set up. It would just be attaching that new data source. I believe I touch on it a little later. One of the powerful aspects of building all of these workflows together into an RCA engine is that you have the capability of turning these insights and actually storing them into vector databases. And then you can use a bunch of different techniques. I won't get into them, but it's all falls under like agentic AI and RAG, to recall that information. So once you
Yeah.
process information from your ERP, it'll continually call it for updates. But once it converts it into your structure of data visualization and insights for your RCA, it sits in the database like that. And you don't have to keep doing that. And attaching an external company's RCA source or manually feeding that in is absolutely doable, and it's a great idea. Thank you for that
Yeah.
question.
The one thing I would add here is you got to be careful that AI is not hallucinating in that these are verified events, because depending on how you're going out and using open source software, you could be actually referencing something that's not verified. So again, you got to be a bit careful. You still need the experts. You're not eliminating the experts in your company. You're still relying on them. It's just help, as Irene said earlier, look at it as using AI, especially when you're going to external data sources, as a way to help you. But always have the experts in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes for even using your own data sets. I mean, we've all seen, incorrect meters out in the field that haven't been calibrated in a long time. We've all seen mistakes in financial reporting. Mistakes happen, and AI can create those mistakes just as well as we can. And so having that expert is absolutely critical. When I design these outputs, like the visuals and the insights, I try to make sure that I incorporate it into a part of the RCA process where people are naturally interacting with it and questioning it, just like they interact and question the other people in the room, right?
Mhm.
We're problem solving. We're detectives, right?
Mm-hmm. Irene, your thoughts?
No, you covered what I was going to say, which is really about the processes as you're going into an incident investigation, is really understanding the frequency of events, not only in your facility, but across the industry. So it can help, but you're absolutely right. When you get all the information in, trust but verify that it's an accurate source.
Nice. Back to Aaron.
All right, so I'll very quickly go through this example for the sake of time. If you have any questions, my email is right behind me. I'd be happy to answer these after the call. But this one is all about, this is essentially the big data version of using a statistical analysis tool like Minitab or QI macros or JMP. So you start with your structured untapped data. This could be your SCADA data or IoT sources, but it could also be historical incident reports or maintenance logs, right? By automating this, we've increased our ability to process more data. So AI processes this data to uncover hidden patterns that might not be immediately obvious. And then you can use a bunch of different, this is what I call old school AI. This has been around for decades. You can use dream detection tools. Once patterns are extracted, H2O.ai is one of them. You can predict high-risk areas based on historical data. You can incorporate it into your predictive maintenance programs. And of course, you can feed all of that back in to your RCA process. So I'll move, again, feel free to ask me any questions on this one after the call, but for the sake of time, I'll move into kind of the final stage, which is, what does this look like when we tie it all together? So in this funnel, we show the journey of taking diverse data sources and transforming that into an informed RCA prep. So you start with data categorization. This is sorting your raw data into manageable and relevant buckets. You then move into data integration, where you bring together that information from multiple sources and create a single cohesive database. And then you move into insight structuring, where we organize data into actionable insights. And then finally, you feed that into your go, no-go decision framework, which is all about turning those insights and data sets that you created into data-driven decisions in your RCA. So that's where the rubber meets the road. So my business does that in two main ways. One is the AI Copilot that we offer out of the box on our website. This is just the RCA prep work software where we try to deliver actionable insights by polling your team members, and analyzing project charters. The second one is our enterprise RCA engine. And this is what happens when you bring all of this together. This is the customizable solution built for specific enterprises based on their specific RCA processes and built on their own custom data architecture. So this RCA system architecture brings everything together and leverages existing enterprise data. That's powerful. And then builds a system to transform their RCA process and ensure timely and confident results. So quickly running through this diagram, you take the vast amount of data that your organization might have. That's ERP systems, IoT data, as well as the unstructured side, which is we historically don't use, emails, SOPs, videos, interviews. And then we have this challenge. There's a challenge in data retrieval. You have to ensure that that data is accessed quickly across all systems without disrupting these workflows. You have integration, which is harmonizing all of those disparate data sources and calling out issues. And then you have insight generation. You have to have the expert working with the AI. If you don't have AI expertise and in the actual functional areas where you're leveraging AI, oftentimes the insights like hallucinations, because they sound better naturally, because AI wants to answer you correctly, those slip through the cracks more. And then finally, you have knowledge retention. So building these systems for continuous organizational learning from past RCA events to prevent reoccurrence. That's where you build that vector database based on this information. And then finally, maintaining and updating systems in the AI space is difficult. AI is a fast-moving space. So the solution to this is to have a single engine where you bring all of that data together. This is a custom solution. It's specific to every single business and enterprise, and it's maintained and upgraded and standardized for enterprise adoption. Here's how it works. You take the data sources, your structured and unstructured data, you feed that through a data structuring layer. This is where all inputs are processed and organized into actionable formats with the RCA engine. And then these are the most valuable outputs that we've found at Enroute. A web view, so you want a streamlined interface for exploring all these RCA insights, You don't want a bunch of workflows spitting things out into a bunch of different places. They get forgotten and lost and underutilized. You put it into report checklists. So this might be an improved project charter, but you can tailor that for your own specific RCA process, as well as tailor it for the language of, is it going to a frontline team or an executive? And then finally, we have the community workspace, where a shared environment for collaborative RCA analysis brings all of these insights together so your team can work on this, either together in a conference room or remotely. And then finally, we have a client decision framework, which is that go, no go. This is a structured guide to turn RCA insights into impactful decisions. So I'll leave you on this slide with the goal of building these workflows and putting them into a common system is to enable your team to deliver a clear and confident RCA before the unit is back up online. This bridges the gap between data complexity and actionable insights. And I understand that that might be a controversial thing to say. When a unit goes down, when we have a defect, when we have a quality issue, stop the line and get it back up. But really what we want to do is we want to have the data and insights there for us when the unit goes down, so that it can be a part of our natural team's decision making when we decide how to bring the unit back up online in the best possible way. Jim?
Yeah, and thanks everyone for participating in the poll. We appreciate it. Fantastic feedback. And if you have questions and or comments of how we can make this better, please do follow up with an email to any of us or all of us. We're always looking for new ideas on how to make this a better tool. With that, we'll go into the last section here of preparing for success and finalizing your kickoff meeting setup, which is what we've been focusing on, is how do we get all this information, as Aaron just covered, ready for this cross-functional kickoff meeting to, again, reduce the time from incident to fully effective cross-functional meeting and balance the workforce availability to get back into full production. So Aaron just covered that, so we'll move on from there. Aaron, back to you.
So now that we've gone through how to improve, how to infuse AI into your RCA process, I wanted to take a step back and discuss some important best practices to maintain constant as you start to make changes to your RCA process or create new ways to do your RCA process. This is essentially your change management plan for implementing AI in your RCA process. So one, you want to make sure you're still setting clear expectations. Define roles and responsibilities for each team member, establish expectations for participation, data sharing, and decision making. Two, you want to align on objectives, so confirm goals and desired outcomes with the entire team. Ensure that there's alignment with both short-term and long-term RCA objectives. This is how you beat out that statistic of 40 to 70% of RCA action items go unexecuted. And then three, you want to prepare essential materials. So 50 background data and context ahead of time. You want to organize your tools and resources like we talked about today, but that includes your AI platforms and your new data sets that you've created. This ensures smooth integration during the meeting. So share the data with everybody and make sure it's well organized. And then four, you want to plan for effective communication. So set communication norms, frequency of updates, preferred channels, especially as you try to do these things more remotely. If that's the path you start to go, but this technology does enable that. Now make sure everyone understands the decision-making process and escalation procedures. And then finally, you want to anticipate potential challenges as you make changes. So identify possible obstacles or biases early in the process and have a strategy in place to manage disruptions. Overall, this is going to allow your team to feel supported and empowered as you bring in these exciting new tools to give them more data and to give them a framework to drive that data into insights in their RCA.
And as we get into the closing slides here, we're now reviewing the AI enhancement applications that translate into benefits, which of course we need to sell to our upper management. And we've identified three of them. Of course, prevention pays off. Our RCA prevents reoccurring failures by addressing the real root cause. We'll work less on assumptions, and we can avoid downtime costs and legal costs that would result maybe of a safety issue, but that can easily be in the order of $500,000. The second area is data-driven kickoff, saves time. Just the manpower that's required during the RCA, during the event and thereafter, overtime hours that always occur, and having time to do this in light of everything else, this can drastically reduce that number of that prep time and easily save you in cost avoidance of $10,000 per RCA event without even a flinching. And then the third area is AI powered RCA. You get better decisions because why? Because you have better data, you have more complete data, you have everybody's opinion being brought in. You're having those open discussions sooner, and folks are able to contribute through it. And this can be, you know, especially when you have a person that's dominating or such. You know, you could get a misdiagnosed root causes, and of course, fixing the wrong root cause wastes a lot of money and time. And at the end, you know, invest in your RCA with AI tools. You know, don't look at RCA as a cost. It's a profit multiplier. We should always be looking at that even before AI, but with AI, it makes it much clearer. Irene?
So let's think about your return on investment. If you do invest in some of these technologies, you're going to get that investment back quite quickly. Just from the fact of if you're going to have faster RCA cycles, if you get them 30% faster, you're going to get back up and running quicker, and that is a hard savings or revenue generation from investing in these technologies and tools. If you're reducing your incidents, that 20%, let's say it's a 20% decrease in near misses. I mean, first and foremost, if it's a safety thing, that is the most important is are we protecting people? Are we avoiding fines? Are we avoiding additional insurance? Are there reputation risks, those intangibles that are so important? You will see an impact on your continuous improvement because those data insights are going to help continually tweak the process towards a state of operational excellence where you have very infrequent events. Really, you know, having smarter RCAs to solve problems better and faster is going to be a direct impact on your bottom line. It's going to help with your buy-in from your leadership. But the other thing it's going to do, it's going to have a really positive effect on your staff. Your staff are going to be focused on running production and helping with revenue versus, oh crap, the process broke again. And that can really be a drain. So, you know, having that investment, I think you're going to see that return on investment fairly quickly.
Thanks, Irene. And with that, we'll close out the webinar on the deliverables. Hopefully you found the webinar what you're expecting. Our future webinars will be going into more of a detail. I think everybody's sold on that that AI can greatly help you in reducing your downtime by up to 50%. And the benefits are there. So in our next webinar, we'll be getting more into actual applications to show you how it really works. And that will be in January. And subsequent to that, we'll be doing additional webinars with partners that have the tools and are actually using these tools also. So look for that in the coming new year. And again, thank you for your questions and comments throughout the webinar. And we hope to see you next year. And please do follow up with questions with us. Either answer them in the chat before you leave or send us an email. With that, closing comments, Irene?
So I'm going to take it back to the journey we've been on with this whole webinar series, starting out with just an overview of the actual process and tool. And one of the things that I've been learning personally myself is just the impact that these tools have on accelerating the process helping with the interpretation. And I keep thinking, well, Aaron, where the heck were you 20 years ago when I was running these processes? So it would have been a lot more helpful. So I think it's a really value adding tool to help streamline your processes and to really make sure that you're being thoroughly holistic in your incident investigations. So I encourage you to keep looking at this. Send Aaron a bunch of questions, and stay safe and tune in to our next webinar.
Aaron?
Well, I wanted to say thank you everyone for the wonderful participation today. I had a bunch of fun, and I hope you did too. I'd like to kind of leave everybody with this. Modern challenges demand modern solutions. And I found myself when I first started down the path of conducting RCAs, doing it the same way it's always been done, and leaving a lot of this technology out of it. And all of a sudden, I'm trying to do this process that preaches data-driven decision making without using the full capability of data in the enterprise. So by aligning your team on this, starting to leverage the power of AI, but not just to use AI, but to truly use it to transform raw data into actionable insights and automate that, you can all of a sudden solve problems faster and smarter. So the future of RCA isn't just about finding the root cause, it's about driving lasting change in your business. And this is how you do it. So
Thanks,
thank you.
Aaron.
Thank you again.
And thanks, Irene. Appreciate it. A lot of hard work putting into this webinar to get this ready. We hope that you found the webinar useful and practical. Again, this is a complicated subject, and there's a lot of areas that we will be going into for more practical applications, so you can see even more deep in how it can be done. But I guess in the meantime, feel free to reach out to any of us, especially Aaron, on what you're thinking about doing yourselves, or if you need some help on enroute.io has a plethora of ways to look at RCA completely different. And I would echo what Irene said. When we started this series, I wasn't really sure where we're going to go. And now we can start seeing where it is going. And I think it's very exciting to be able to take all this data, centralize it, make more informed decisions, timely decisions. And it's a game changer out there. And it will be your competitive advantage. The companies that are able to fix their problems quicker and faster will be the companies that survive in the coming years as we come into a more competitive landscape. Thank you all, and have a happy holiday. Cheers.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thanks all.